and then you take the next part down, and you just, like we do everything, we deal with it as it's in front of us.
When Billy Brown passed away in the unforgiving heart of the Alaskan wilderness, it felt like the end of an extraordinary chapter. To millions, he was the rugged patriarch who chose a life away from electricity, internet, and modern comforts. But after his death in 2021, the world was hit with a twist no one saw coming. Beneath the flannel shirts and mountain man wisdom lay a secret that shook even the most devoted fans. Billy Brown had amassed a fortune worth over $1 million. For a man who shunned society's luxuries, how was such wealth even possible? Was there more to Billy's story than what we saw on screen? And just how deep did the truth go? Billy Brown. It was a quiet Sunday night when everything changed. Billy Brown, the man so many knew as the heart of Alaskan Bush People, passed away after suffering a seizure. Billy wasn't just the father of a large off-grid family. He was their anchor, their guide through the toughest parts of the Alaskan wilderness. For years, people had watched him survive harsh winters, raise 7 kids in the wild, and stick to a way of life that most couldn't even imagine. Then suddenly, he was gone. The announcement caught many by surprise. Discovery, the network that aired the show, released a heartfelt message. "We are devastated to hear of Billy Brown's sudden passing," they said. "He's been part of the Discovery family for years, a trailblazer, a lovely man, and most definitely one of a kind. Our heart is with his family and those who knew him and loved him as they deal with this devastating loss." And they meant every word. Billy wasn't just another TV personality. He didn't live a picture-perfect life, and that's what made him all the more compelling. When viewers tuned in to watch him, they didn't tune in to watch luxury or drama. They tuned in to see a family survive, to see a man try to pass on something meaningful to his children.
Come on, make it quick, we need you!
And now that man is gone. His wife, Amy, and the kids who had grown up living in hand-built cabins and wearing hand-me-downs were suddenly facing a different kind of wilderness. They would have to figure out life without the person who always led the way. But here's where it gets complicated. After the grief and the silence of that night, something unexpected came to the surface. Net worth. For a man who spent most of his life off the grid, Billy Brown sure left behind a lot more than anyone expected. It turns out that Billy owned rare coins and baseball cards, even a custom Harley chopper that looked like it belonged more on a highway than deep in the mountains. At the time of his demise, his livestock alone, from longhorn cattle, ostriches, and horses, was worth about $31,000. His wife, Amy, who stepped in as executor of his estate, ultimately disclosed everything in court documents. It happened that in April 2021, just 2 months after Billy passed, a business partner filed a lawsuit accusing the estate of breach of contract. Suddenly, their private world had to be laid out in legal filings, right down to the value of a Queen Anne sofa. So what was inside Billy's world when no one was looking? Amy listed $10,000 in coins and ingots, even though she admitted that it might be an overestimate. There was also $7,000 worth of sentimental jewelry, $5,000 in baseball cards, and around $21,000 in household items. Some of it was personal, like a large framed portrait of their mountain home, valued at just $120, a Queen Anne sofa valued at $1,200, and 2 cabinets valued at $1,000. Other pieces were far more valuable. That Harley-Davidson chopper alone, $14 grand. Amy listed his assets as $439,000. Then came the land. Billy had $415,000 worth of it for 4 parcels. But what's perhaps more surprising is that he only had $2,000 in his Wells Fargo bank account at the time. And there was debt, too, around $27,000 in medical bills that Amy had to deal with while still grieving. What stood out most in those court papers, though, was this: Billy didn't leave a will. No written instructions and no blueprint for how to divide what was his. This made things more complicated for Amy, especially with the lawsuit hanging over her and the added pressure of keeping her family's finances from slipping through the cracks. She explained that the income from the family business, Alaskan Wilderness Brown Family, LLC, had always been deposited directly into their accounts. And because that business was connected to the show, she had to wait for the Discovery Channel to permit sharing more details.
That's the heart right there. That's the heart of the ranch, guys.
And if all that wasn't enough, Amy was sick. She told the court she had been struggling with her health, which made every step of this process even harder. At one point, she had to be rushed to the hospital with chest pains, and through all of it, she was trying to protect what Billy had built, both for herself and for the kids he left behind. Now, if you're sitting there wondering, how did all of this even get out? Well, remember that lawsuit we mentioned earlier? That's where it all began to spill. The court case. Back in April 2020, a man named Robert Mahan, a doctor from Tennessee, filed a breach of contract lawsuit against Billy's estate and his business, Alaskan Wilderness Family Productions. This wasn't a new deal that had gone bad. This goes back to 2009. According to court documents, Robert said he invested $20,000 in January of that year. The agreement, he claimed, was pretty straightforward. Billy would pay him 10% of whatever income came from the publication and sales tied to Alaskan Wilderness Family Productions. Specifically, the money would come from books Billy had written. The deal was supposed to last 10 years, but Robert said he never saw a dime. Then came a second contract just a few weeks later in late January 2009. This time, Robert claimed he invested another $10,000, but for a lifetime deal. The terms? He would receive 10% of all gross income from Billy's creative works, movies, television, and even documentaries. And once again, Robert said no payments ever came. He believed Billy was earning up to $500,000 per episode on Alaskan Bush People. And with 10 episodes in the latest season, that adds up. So now, he was demanding $500,000 in damages, plus a trial. But here's where things got more complicated. More than 2 years later, Robert asked the court to officially add Billy's wife, Amy Brown, as a named defendant in the case. She was already serving as executor of Billy's estate and had been the one handling the legal side from day one. Still, Robert argued that she wasn't just representing the estate anymore, she had a personal stake too. The court documents explained that since Billy and Amy were married and the lawsuit involved marital property, Amy needed to be included by name. They said the move wouldn't harm Amy because she had already been defending the case through her legal team from the beginning. Meanwhile, Amy's attorney pushed back hard. They filed a motion to dismiss the case entirely, arguing that the federal court lacked the right to hear it. Since the estate was already under the jurisdiction of the state's probate court, they claimed that it was where the lawsuit belonged. But Robert's attorney didn't back down. He responded with a plea for the court to keep the case alive, insisting his client was ready to continue fighting. He even submitted copies of both contracts, the ones supposedly signed by Billy himself and notarized years ago. And to make things even more official, Robert filed a creditor's claim in the estate case. That single lawsuit, rooted in 2 old contracts and nearly forgotten investments, opened the door to everything: the money, the assets, the debts, even the pain Amy was still carrying. Nonetheless, throughout it all, Amy Brown remained utterly silent, as she didn't speak publicly about the lawsuit. However, none of this mattered as much as the night Billy Brown collapsed. Demise. Billy Brown's demise didn't just shake the family, it stopped everything in its tracks. According to those closest to him, he passed away from a seizure after dealing with a string of serious health issues over the years. His son Bear broke the news on Instagram, writing that they were heartbroken. Billy hadn't just been the head of the family. He was their best friend, a loving father, grandfather, and husband, and his absence left a silence they couldn't fill. In Bear's message, he mentioned that they would honor his legacy, continue with the dream he had built, and live the life he had taught them. What made it even harder was that just days before his death, Billy looked straight into the camera and said, "God has blessed me so much, but I won't be around forever." That moment didn't feel like just another part of the show. It felt real, almost like he knew what was coming. He went on to say that, to him, what mattered most was that the family stayed strong together. The ranch, he said, had to keep growing, and as long as it was built the right way, it would live on even after him. To make things worse, this wasn't the first loss the family had suffered. Less than a year before Billy passed, his niece Amber Branson had lost her life in Texas from severe injuries she got in a fire. The grief was already there, and then it deepened. Billy had been in and out of hospitals in the years before his death. Doctors had warned him again and again that living so high up in the mountains was making things worse. The altitude was putting strain on his breathing, which in turn was stressing his heart. He was 68, and each trip to the hospital seemed to end with a more serious diagnosis. But Billy didn't care. He wanted to be on that mountain because that's where he felt alive, where he felt at peace. When he came home after one hospital stay, he told his family that what he thought were lung issues were heart problems, and it wasn't something that could be fixed. In one painful scene on Alaskan Bush People, Ami sat down with their grown kids and told them the truth. Their dad wasn't going to get better. However, Billy didn't want to spend whatever time he had left in a hospital or hooked up to machines. He wanted to be at home, on the land he loved. Still, the kids tried to lend a hand. They knew the mountain's altitude was hurting him, so before he came home, they physically dragged their parents' trailer down the mountain to a lower elevation, hoping it would ease his breathing. It was cold, the trail was frozen, but they did it. That was how much they wanted to keep him around a little longer. All of this happened before the latest season of Alaskan Bush People aired. When it did, viewers saw him back on the mountain with his family, trying to push through. But then, as if they hadn't endured enough, disaster struck again. A wildfire ripped through their land. They lost a huge part of the ranch they had worked so hard to build. The damage was extensive, and it hit them hard. According to The Sun, Billy had purchased 4 parcels of forest land back in 2018 for $415,000 each, spending a total of $1.6 million. Altogether, the family owned over 436. Bear shared photos of the fire on social media, calling it a devastating loss. He said the flames swept through the mountain, their home. It was still burning at the time he made the post, but he was clear that they would not give up on their plan. Noah, one of Billy's other sons, confirmed it too. There's been a massive wildfire on Palmer Mountain. Thankfully, everyone got out safely. Snowbird thanked the first responders and firefighters who worked to stop the blaze and protect their home. Before the fire, Billy had been hopeful. He talked about their new property and said this time they had a real ranch. They were considering adding barns, horses, and cattle. In another trailer for the new season, the family was seen facing the harsh winter, building on the land while also dealing with wild animals, including coyotes and bears. Billy's voice was still there in the footage, saying, "We've gone through great extremes to do things the way we want to do them. Everyone has to bust it more than we've ever had. Nothing is going to stop the Browns." Sadly, we will not be able to hear this voice for a long time. If you didn't know, there was more going on behind Billy Brown's passing than just the seizure. In truth, it was a mix of other related illnesses. Emphysema, recurring seizures, and years of tobacco use had all taken their toll on his body. So, it wasn't just a sudden event. His health had been slowly breaking down, piece by piece. He was 68 years old when it happened, and it was February. That day, a seizure hit hard, and this time, he didn't pull through. A medical helicopter had been requested, but before it could even lift off, it was already too late. They even attempted CPR, but he passed away at home, surrounded by the place he had fought so hard to stay in. The Washington Sheriff's Office later confirmed the details, and a spokesperson told The Sun that medics and fire crews had been on scene for over an hour and a half before the sheriff's office was even called. By that time, they were simply responding to what they considered a natural, unattended death. The cause of his demise, they said, was unrelated to anything suspicious or criminal. Later on, The Sun obtained the actual investigative report, which painted a clearer picture of what happened in those final moments. It turns out someone from the production crew was the first to call 911, and that was 4:13 p.m. They had just gotten a call from Bear, Billy's son, saying his father wasn't breathing. By the time the deputy arrived, it was over. The report said a 68-year-old man had gone into seizure, became unresponsive, and stopped breathing altogether. CPR had been tried, but there was no success. After the shock of losing Billy, things moved quickly. His death certificate, which was later obtained by the son, revealed that he was cremated on February 22. The service was held quietly at Berg Funeral Service in Oroville, Washington, far away from cameras and crowds, just the way Billy might have wanted it. Officially, his occupation was listed as actor, and his industry was marked television. It's strange seeing someone's whole life boil down to two simple words like that, especially someone like Billy, who lived so far outside the world of Hollywood, even though cameras followed his every move. On the other side of this story is another account that says when it all happened, it wasn't just the family who jumped into action. The production crew, who had spent years filming the Browns, were also caught in the middle of the chaos. One of the female crew members placed the first emergency call. Her voice on the recording said urgently, "Hi, I have someone not breathing. I need an ambulance as soon as possible." She gave the family's home address, then explained who she was. "I work for them. Mr. Billy Brown is from the Alaskan Bush People, the show. We are part of the production team. His son just called me, Bear Brown." When the 911 operator asked why Bear hadn't made the call himself, she explained that Bear had tried but couldn't get through, and through that call, you could hear voices in the background of the call yelling, "Wake up! Wake up!" Not long after, a male crew member also reached out to report what had happened. He had received a voice message through Facebook, likely from one of the kids, saying Billy was having a seizure, and he relayed that message to 911 as fast as he could. Noah married Rain Alicia, and they have two sons, Elijah Connor Brown and Adam Bishop Brown. Gabe married Raquel Rose Pantila, and together they have two daughters, Sophie and Winifred. Bear married Raven Adams, and they have two sons, River Anthony Brown and Cove Brown. By the time the show reached its later seasons, the Brown family wasn't just a group trying to survive in the wild. They had grown into a full legacy. But even with all their fame, legal trouble, and growing families, the one constant in their story was always Billy. He wasn't just the father. He was the center of it all. And for fans who followed them from that very first episode, his presence was what truly held the Wolfpack together. Then again, in 2017, everything changed for the Brown family. After years of braving the wilderness in Alaska, they made an emotional decision to leave it all behind. Amy Brown, who was 57 at the time, had been diagnosed with advanced lung cancer. The diagnosis was devastating, and it forced the entire family to pack up their lives and head to Washington, where Amy could receive the urgent medical treatment she needed. While Amy battled her illness, the family's journey continued on screen. Alaskan Bush People's 12th season premiered on Discovery, with its final episode airing in October. But behind the scenes, things were never quite the same. The show evolved, no longer just about surviving in the wild. It became a story of survival in every sense, of holding a family together through crisis, loss, and significant change. Then, in 2021, the heart of the Brown family was lost, and fans around the world mourned his death. Billy is survived by his wife Amy and their 7 children: Matthew, Joshua, known as Bam Bam, Bear, Gabe, Gabriel, Noah, Snowbird, Amora Jean, and Rain. Merry Christmas, Catherine Raindrop Brown. His legacy lives on not only through his children and grandchildren, but also through the powerful and deeply personal story the family shared with millions of viewers. However, trouble for the Brown family wasn't over just yet. After everything she had already faced, no one expected to hear that Amy Brown had been rushed to the hospital again. The news came suddenly, and Bear Brown, along with his sister Snowbird, let fans know that their mom had been taken to the ER after experiencing severe chest pain and trouble breathing. Things got so serious that she had to be medevaced to a larger hospital, where she was placed in the ICU. The only information Bear and Snowbird had at the time was terrifying and limited. Doctors suspected pneumonia, and Amy had to be put under anesthesia, with a breathing tube inserted to help her lungs do the work they couldn't manage on their own. Basically, her lungs are really bad, Snowbird said at the time, and coming from someone who has seen their mom survive the impossible before, that said a lot. This wasn't the first time Amy Brown had stared down a life-threatening illness. As we mentioned, back in 2017, she was diagnosed with stage 3B lung cancer. Doctors gave her just a 3% chance of surviving it, but Amy refused to give in. She began intense chemotherapy and radiation treatments almost immediately. And just as you heard earlier, the family left behind their remote Alaska life for good, moving to a sprawling 435-acre property in the North Cascade Mountains of Washington, so that Amy could be close to better hospitals. By the end of 2018, she beat the odds and announced she was in remission. That should have been the end of the nightmare, but her health remained fragile. And in March 2024, her strength was tested again. She developed a severe case of pneumonia, which landed her back in the hospital. But then, just a few days after her most recent scare, Bear came back with another update, and finally, it was one fans could breathe easier hearing. "I just got word that Mom is doing better," he said in a video posted to Instagram in February. He explained that doctors had been able to lower the amount of oxygen she needed, though she still had pneumonia. The good news? The liquid was slowly draining from her lungs. Even better, Amy was well enough that they were preparing to move her out of the ICU, which is totally awesome, Bear said with relief written all over his face. He added that while she wasn't going home just yet, the plan was to keep her for another week to ensure everything stabilized. "Mom is so strong," Bear said, his voice carrying the weight of everything they'd been through as a family. "So everything is looking good. She's healing up nicely." Today, Amy is back home with her children after being discharged from the hospital. She's a mother to 7: Bear, Snowbird, Rain, Joshua, Bam Bam, Matt, Gabriel, and Noah, all of whom she raised alongside her late husband, Billy Brown. Amy and Billy were married nearly 42 years before his sudden passing, and their union was nothing short of loving. Outro. What part of the Alaskan family story surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this dive into their hidden life, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And before you head out, check out the other videos waiting for you on screen. There's always more to discover. When the deputy from the Washington Sheriff's Office arrived, he walked into a crowded, grieving home. According to the report, everyone inside was family, except for 3 members of the production team who had been there since the emergency started. The officer briefly spoke with Amy, who was 57 at the time, and their son Gabe, who was 31. The deputy offered his condolences, then quietly gathered what he needed: Billy's information, his medical background, and a list of his medications. When the coroner later arrived, the deputy handed over all the collected information and prescriptions to assist with the official process. A few weeks later, the Discovery Channel aired a special episode called The Legacy of Billy Brown.
It's like our whole family is growing really quick, but I'm loving every minute of it.
A voiceover opened the tribute by calling him a father, a husband, and the leader of the pack. They shared never-before-seen moments and interviews as the family looked back on the man who had shaped not only their lives, but also the very identity of the show. So, what made the Alaskan show worthwhile? The Alaskan Bush People. Alaskan Bush People wasn't your typical reality show. It didn't follow celebrities or flashy city life. Instead, it introduced viewers to the Brown family, a group determined to live far away from modern society and deep in the remote wilderness. The show premiered on the Discovery Channel on May 6, 2014, and from that moment on, the world was hooked on this off-the-grid family. In the early seasons, the family was filmed in Alaska, including locations such as Copper Center, Hoonah, and the isolated Chichagof Island. Later, the crew followed them to Okanogan County, Washington, as they attempted to maintain their wilderness lifestyle in a completely new setting. Although the show claimed to offer a genuine look into their rugged lives, it wasn't without its critics. Some viewers and media outlets accused it of being heavily scripted or even fake, and over the years, it is clear that these controversies didn't stop with the show's content. Behind the cameras, the Browns had their share of legal trouble. Billy Brown, the family patriarch, had a past that was not widely known. Back in 1980, he was involved in horse theft. His wife, Amy, had her history, having been linked to welfare fraud at one point. However, it wasn't just their pasts that were under scrutiny. Their status as Alaskan residents was also called into question. In 2014, after an investigation by the Alaska Department of Revenue, a grand jury in Juneau hit the family with a whopping 60 counts of first-degree, unsworn falsification and theft. Between 2009 and 2012, the Browns claimed Alaska residency on their Permanent Fund Dividend (PFD) applications. However, the state believed otherwise. They accused the family of living outside Alaska for more than 180 days a year while continuing to collect money intended only for full-time residents. Late Billy himself was charged with 24 of those counts, and authorities claimed he had taken over $21,000 in PFD money for himself and other family members. Eventually, in 2015, Billy and his son Joshua Bam Bam Brown agreed to a plea deal. The two took responsibility for the rest of the family except Matt, who wasn't living with them at the time, and Rain, who was too young. As punishment, Billy and Bam Bam were sentenced to house arrest in a hotel in Juneau, along with restitution and fines. Yet despite the legal drama, Alaskan Bush People kept moving forward. The show was renewed for a 10th season in 2019, and by the end of that same year, Discovery had greenlit Season 11, which premiered in December. Season 12 followed in August 2020, proving that the Browns still had a loyal audience notwithstanding the controversy and all. Furthermore, Billy's personal life was also more complex than the show often let on. Before Amy, he had been married to a woman named Brenda Britt. Together, they had a daughter, Twyla Byers. She appeared in the Season 5 episode titled Growing the Wolf Pack. There's also talk of a second daughter from that marriage, a woman named Brandy, though details about her remain scarce. As for the family viewers came to know over the years, it's a big one. Billy and Amy had 7 children together. Matt Brown, born in 1982, Joshua Bam Bam Brown, born in 1984, Bear Brown, whose full name is Solomon Isaiah Freedom Brown, born in 1987, Gabe Brown, short for Gabriel Starbuck Brown, Noah Dark Cloud Brown, Amora Jean Birdie Brown, and the youngest, Merry Christmas Catherine Rainey Brown, born in 2002. Through their adult children, Billy and Amy became grandparents multiple times.